All right, next I'd like to welcome Paul Drappi from Wayfair. Paul is the site director and business-to-business lead for Wayfair, who recently added a new location here on Brunswick Landing and has been here for a year this month, so congratulations on that. Originally from Central Massachusetts, Paul and his wife, Emily, and two children, Leo and Marty, relocated to North Yarmouth during their time getting here. Paul has 2 pigs, chickens, and ducks, and enjoys mountain biking in the beautiful Maine woods. So, without further ado, Paul, come on up.
Justice for the vertically challenged. Well, it's great to be here, and thanks to Midcoast Edge for inviting Wayfair to participate tonight, and Love of Beer and Nate and Flight Deck for hosting. As Matt said, I'm the site director for Wayfair Brunswick. We're located just across the block here in Brunswick Landing. So what I thought I'd do tonight is just tell you a little bit about Wayfair and why we landed in Maine, and tell you about my personal story in terms of ending up in Maine. So, Wayfair, we're an online leader in selling home goods on the internet. Our goal is to really transform the way people shop for their home online. We sell about 8 million products, and we do so by partnering with about 10,000 suppliers. In terms of the company history, it was founded in 2002 by Neerj Shah and Steve Conine, and they actually still lead the company today, which is really unique and pretty amazing given the growth that's happened and the time that's happened over. We're a growth company, so we actually did about $3.6 billion in net revenue Q1, trailing back the prior 12 months, and we have over 5,000 employees, most of whom are down in our headquarters in Boston. But obviously we got folks in Maine, and we have folks across the country. We have offices in London, Berlin, and Galway, Ireland to support our international operation. Again, it was founded in 2002, and the original business model was actually to take a look at a very narrow product category and launch a single website dedicated to selling those products and provide great service and competitive pricing. So, for example, the first few sites were teaquickerandmore.com, racksandstands.com, and mountsandmore.com. So, each of these were independent websites, out there on the internet. And so, back in the day when everyone's getting their first plasma TV and where the heck do I get a TV mount to hang this thing on the wall, what would you do? People are just starting to go on Google, use search engines to find things online. And so when you search for TV mount, and there's a business called mountsandmore.com, and all they do is sell TV mounts, and you can call them up and get really great help. It was a great way to kind of capture, the early way that consumers use the internet to browse and shop. And so, obviously the internet had just kind of busted, but Neerj and Steve saw this opportunity to say, hey, we're not necessarily going to go build this, mass market business. We see people selling birdhouses online and having pretty good success. So, they didn't have this grand vision to build a mass market retailer. They were very entrepreneurial about seeing kind of a single opportunity and pursuing it in a way that they knew would have immediate success. So, the business really grew with that model where we got up to, 200 of what we would call these microsites, from allbarstools.com, bedroomfurnituredirect.com. I don't think we ever launched it, but I think there was going to be one, allroosterdecor.com. So if you were big on rooster decor, we would have had you covered. And, really we're a tech company in retailers' clothing. So, as we built this business, we really built a strong group of engineers. The technology, most of it's all on a homegrown platform, which really allowed us to be flexible and nimble and do what we needed to do to grow the business. Obviously we wanted to be super customer centric. At the same time, we're consummate operators. So, really it was all about building an amazing supply chain where we're not inventorying any of the product, but we want to make sure that the customer doesn't know that their experience shopping with us is, would be no different than if we were fulfilling the order ourselves and shipping it directly to them and, delivering it to their door. So, the model worked really well. It's not that Neerj and Steve thought, hey, 15 years from now, we're going to be this big multi-billion-dollar mass market retailer, but they identified a unique opportunity and an opportunity in the market. And, instead of only focusing on a single path to get to where we are today, they were really kind of nimble and adapted. And there was a huge strategic decision, really it played out in 2011 to take those 200 websites we had built up and that had been really successful and shrink it down, to Wayfarer.com. We kept a few of the websites that were kind of unique brands like allmodern.com and our flash sale business, JossinMaine.com. But, we took a really big gamble to say, hey, you know what? The cost of acquiring customers online is getting really high. And when somebody's shopping at Bedroom Furniture Direct, they don't know they're going to get the same experience as when they shop on, allbarstools.com. So we weren't really able to build a brand and kind of drive that loyalty. So we really put all the chips on the table in 2011 and shut down all of those websites and launched the Wayfair.com brand. And it's really exciting to be here today and see, that was a risk, and, it was hard to say which way it was going to go. And we gave up a lot of, we'd built up a lot of equity in online search. So if there's the paid ads and then the free stuff below it. We were pretty high with the free stuff. So we had a lot of traffic coming to those 200 sites that we knew we were going to give up, by making this big gamble on the Wayfair.com brand. So, as we stand here today, we know it's been really successful again. I think we've grown about 10x since 2010 when we started to plan that process, and it's just been really an exciting ride. So when I think about why Wayfair came to Maine, I think about the company culture, and I think about how it's really stayed strong and stayed the same. Even though we've grown tremendously from the 5 people when I started to the almost 6,000 today, and it makes me think about why Maine and Wayfair are such a good fit for each other. I think it's probably because we're still founder-led, which again is very unique at this stage of our growth. But, 2 aspects of our culture really come to mind when I think about why we're in Maine. One would be this entrepreneurial spirit, and the second would be collaboration. Neeraj and Steve are absolute entrepreneurs. They built a successful business prior to launching Wayfair, a software development company, in their early 20s. They're actually roommates at Cornell, and for a business class came up with a business plan for a project, and then they said, hey, maybe we should try to actually implement this plan. And so they got some early clients that were good clients, had no idea what they were doing in terms of software development, but were able to land some clients, learn as they go, and built a really successful software development company in the 90s. So Wayfair was really their second venture. And for them to be leading the business, they've really made sure that the company keeps that entrepreneurial spirit. So, we absolutely will take risks. The big one being transitioning to Wayfair.com from CSN stores. But they really encourage everybody to take risks and that it's okay to fail. The culture, as far as the entrepreneurial spirit, it's a very roll up your sleeve, hands-on culture. I still take out the trash over at our office sometimes, right? So we really want to make sure that the leaders we have in place, on down to the folks that are working on the front lines, are kind of willing to do whatever it takes to do the job. They're willing to roll up their sleeves and get it done. And then lastly, I think being nimble and flexible has been really important. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's really key. I think a lot of people launch a business with kind of this really grand vision in mind, and they think they really know the path they're going to go down there to meet that vision and bring that vision to bear. But I think at the end of the day, you really need to be open to taking different paths to get to your goals. And I think that's one of the things I've learned working at Wayfair, is that you might not have, steps 1 through 50 to get to where you're going, but if you're working with a really talented group of people, and you use data and you make smart decisions, you can often get to where you want to go. So, and then the second piece on top of that entrepreneurial spirit is just collaboration. I think a lot of people thinking about being entrepreneurial and it's kind of this individualistic thing. At the end of the day, Wayfair's success has really been contingent on having a culture of collaboration. We, even in the physical layout, nobody has an office. The 2 founders have sat out on the floor with everybody else since day one, and it really encouraged us to share ideas, work together. You're in a fast-paced environment, things are changing every day, and you really need to be in close communication and collaborate. We're also organized in a way that collaboration is key, so we're very matrixed. some businesses might have a single business unit with each kind of function in it that has, a P&L. We have marketing and sales and operations, and, they have a business unit they're responsible for, whereas we really look to have the functions separate, and they come together to work on, the strategic initiatives. So you don't have kind of a single leader at the end of the day in a lot of cases that can, make the final decision, and so it just requires a lot of collaboration and teamwork in order to get where you want to get. So those two things came to mind as I thought about tonight, because in the fit, as far as Wayfarer in Maine, because when I think about Maine, I absolutely think about that entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, just, being here tonight at Flight Deck, and seeing the early success, hearing Jamie talk about New Beat. I mean, that is really what I see a lot in Maine is somebody like, folks like Jamie and Nate who, followed that path, had that entrepreneurial spirit, and have some very tangible things to show for it. I think about, folks in Maine being described as rugged, they're hardworking. And then there's this absolute kind of idea of self-sufficiency in Maine that I think is probably, that's a notion here that I think is more significant than in a lot of places I've been, at least. So, when I think about Wayfarer coming to Maine, those are the kind of the characteristics and the culture and the people that I think make, Wayfarer a good fit. And then on the collaboration side, and I can speak to this both as a, leader of Wayfarer here and personally, it's a very neighborly place. Sure, it's rugged, sure, it has an entrepreneurial spirit, but, no entrepreneur is probably successful without the support of people around them, of other businesses, of a mentor or an investor. And, I've experienced that personally as I moved into North Yarmouth last year. And, we've experienced that as a business here at Wayfarer. It really feels like Maine, I've been here a year, but it's really clear to me it's a place where neighbors are going to help you even if you don't ask, and that you can always count on the people around you to be reliable. And so, as we thought about, where do we put this sales and operations center, it really came down to the people and the culture. Of course, backing up a bit, we were very data driven, so we started with this, location study that had all this demographic data, all these inputs, right? And it narrowed this long list of locations down to a shorter list of locations. But once you get to that point, and I had launched a couple sites previously, it really comes down to getting to know the people and getting to know the culture of the place that you're going to be. And you can only do that by being on the ground. So, for Wayfarer, it was just, making sure we were on the ground at the final list of locations. And, ultimately, it became very clear that, it kind of clicks almost in a way that, Maine was going to be the right location for us. And it all comes down to, the type of talent you're going to have access to, and the type of work ethic you're going to have. And again, I think with the entrepreneurial spirit and the collaboration that you see up in Maine, it just made it a tremendous fit. So it's been a great success. As Matt said, we launched about a year ago now. So we had our year anniversary on June 13th. We have about 150 folks in the building already, which is great. There's two primary functions. One is a supply chain function, supplier operations. Their mission is to make sure that all customers' orders are flowing smoothly through the supply chain. So we have a whole infrastructure where we take this ship direct from supplier to consumer, and really make sure that it's well managed, that it's monitored, and that the customers, don't, have a different experience from one, supplier to the next. So, they do a tremendous job monitoring the supply chain and making sure that the performance is very good. The other bigger function, which is the one I directly manage, is a B2B inside sales or account management team. We actually have found, even when I started way back in the day, businesses just came to us. We are a great resource for them. Certainly, if you're an interior designer, you're property manager, hotels, we just had such a breadth of selection and such great service. We could really help them with their projects. So we actually built a dedicated business program that, will now businesses can sign up and get some additional benefits, including an account manager. And so we have a really good group of folks on that team in the building as well. And we're actually adding a new function here, which is great. And, this was a decision just made this year, and out of any of the locations that could have been selected to grow this team, the leader picked Maine, which is really exciting. So we'll have some merchandising operations roles, which are roles that are responsible for the product data, making sure we have the best possible product data on the site, the best possible images, et cetera. So, things here for Wayfarer are going really well. We're really excited to be here. Recruiting has been great, and we are actively recruiting for a number of different roles. So if you want to take a peek wayfaircareers.com. So again, super happy to be here, as a representative of Wayfair and as a business. So as far as my personal, story getting to Maine, I mean, I think the short version would be, my wife's from Maine. Her maiden name was Boston, so I knew my role, immediately. So I guess that's that. No, I started with Wayfair in 2002, and it was just Neerj and Steve and two other people. And I actually plan to go to law school. I only put in a couple years, and then I'll go to law school. And actually, I interviewed at Steve's house in Boston. Actually, what am I getting myself into? This is really weird. In this guy's living room. They didn't offer me the job at first because I made the rookie mistake of telling them I was going to law school. But I persisted and went back a couple months later because I just thought it would be such a unique opportunity to work for a couple of entrepreneurs launching something new. And they did hire me at that point. I may have loosened up on the law school plan in the interview. But once the thing started taking off, it was kind of like, all right, law school out the window. And I was just fortunate enough to grow with the company, and I got to do so much. And I think that's what's great about working for a small business that's growing is, you're going to wear a lot of hats, and I think that was so beneficial for me professionally. Was, just getting going in my career to have to work on things in finance and primarily customer service, but I also had to do buying. I had to try to sign up new suppliers. I had to go to trade shows with Neerj and Steve, and I think I looked like I was 16, and they would send me into the showroom where they knew they would never agree to sell on the internet. I'm like, hey, have you heard of the internet? You want to sell furniture on it? And they're like, no, get out of here, kid. Don't you have class? It was just an awesome experience. And I grew with the company, and I was ultimately running what we call the sales and service function, which is really our contact center operation. So I launched two sites in Utah, had teams in Boston, and an operation in Galway, Ireland. And it was a fantastic role. But, in 2014, my wife and I were expecting our second child. We had a 2-year-old at the time. And just, with the growth of the company, I could see the writing on the wall as far as how much travel was going to be involved in the role that I was in. I didn't really want to do that with a young family. So I started to think about, maybe there's another role within Wayfair. This is a great company, still growing so fast. What can I do? But as I started to think about that, I started to think about, well, do I actually really want to settle in Boston? And maybe if I'm going to make this big decision about this role that I've been so deeply engaged in for so many years, maybe I should think about some other things. So it didn't take long once I started thinking about that to realize, what? Boston's an awesome city. Living around Boston is cool, but, I grew up in Central Mass, as Matt said, and around with some space and spending time outdoors, and it just, I kind of knew I didn't want to settle in Boston. So, obviously I'd been coming to Maine for a number of years with my wife, visiting her family, and I just loved it. And so it was a pretty obvious that we would look at Maine, and that would probably be our primary option. But it wasn't a slam dunk. We were thinking about a lot of different things. And I guess what I would say is that as we put our list of things together that we wanted, I can't think of a thing that we didn't check off as we started to look at Maine. I really can't. As living in Boston, I lived in Wayland, which is like 20 minutes outside of Boston on a Saturday morning, about an hour out of Boston on a Monday morning. I thought, why would you take 9 toll booths and merge them down to 3 lanes, people? That is just not good planning. Between the commute and, wanting space, wanting some peace, all that, it just, Boston actually had some pretty good knocks against it. And then Maine had everything to offer. So again, we ended up in North Yarmouth, and we have, great schools. We can be in the ocean in 10 minutes and, to Sunday River in an hour and a half, or Sugarloaf in 2 hours. Great schools where we're located. And, as any visual observation of my physique would confirm, I do appreciate craft beer and food. So being near Portland is cool. And again, it just had everything we wanted. And, obviously you can only do so much to kind of know about where it is you're going to move. And I think we did enough. But what was great is everything was really validated right when we got up here, from the neighbors coming right over. I'm not going to knock Wayland so much, but honestly, I had neighbors that never came by ever, let alone when we first moved in. And where I moved in Maine, everyone was over very quickly. My neighbor pruned the apple trees that we have. We just have the carpenter lives, up the road that helped us out. We had a guy help us with our pigs who didn't charge us anything. And so, just the people here, and the beauty and the access to the things that you want to have access to, it's all there. So we couldn't be happier. So yeah, that's my my little bit on Wayfair and my story of getting to Maine. Happy to answer any questions at all if people have them on Wayfair or anything else. Yeah.
So our media has been highlighting all the workforce development issues we've had, and you did a great job highlighting all the positives, but what's some of the struggles or the skills you're looking for in this area that drove you to Brunswick?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I hate to say, I mean, we haven't had really too many struggles, but I think what, we think about, again, so we've hired all 150 folks who think they're great folks and met our hiring plans. But what I think about as we continue to scale and we'll hire as we grow is, certainly, retaining talent and just having a diverse workforce and making sure that we have, a great campus recruiting program and a great recruiting program to bring other folks in from other walks of life. So I think what I would say is I think it's going to be a tremendous amount of work, and I understand it's a very competitive market here. So for us, it's how can we contribute to the community? How can we get involved with organizations that retain talent in Maine, that bring talent in Maine, that make other businesses like Wayfair think about Maine as an option so that we can build up a base of these types of businesses while, of course, not making it like Boston. Let's not worry about that. So that's what I think about. We haven't hit anything where I said, oh, that's painful, but certainly we have to be really mindful of what the labor market looks like right now. We know what the unemployment rate is and the type of folks we're looking to bring in. But typically with Wayfair, it depends on the role. You'll see different experience required, et cetera. But we're just really big believers in talent, and that's really what we focus on. I mean, Liz Graham, who replaced me in my prior role, had never run a contact center. She's doing a tremendous job. So I think for us, we really just try to get talented folks in the door, and I think we'll be in a good position to do that. And obviously, we want to be an employer of choice, so we want to be a great place to work, and if we can do that, I think we'll do okay. Nate?
Not a softball. So you mentioned that you're so Wayfair is a data-driven company. You were going to go to law school, so you're a fact-based guy. But then you rattled off a bunch of subjective, lifestyle-oriented things that drew you here and drew Wayfair here. So how does a relatively fact-based, subjective person working for an objective, fact-based, data-driven company include and balance those subjective, hard to measure, hard to put in a spreadsheet factors?
If you could repeat that back verbatim, please, that would be fabulous.
Of course you can.
Plead the fifth. No, so, I guess what I would say is while I talk about Wayfair being data-driven, there's a balance there. And it's actually, if you were to go through one of our performance reviews and we talk about, how you need to use data to do your job, there's going to be a part about, you can't boil the salt out of the ocean. There's only so far you're going to get with data. And I think I mentioned that in terms of our location study. At that point, it's judgment. And your judgment is probably based on some of your instincts and your experience. And so, again, we absolutely want people to have command of data and be able to use data, but we also want to move fast. So to that end, we really try to get data to where we have a good idea what's going on and what might work. But at the end of the day, you got to make those calls. The other thing I'd say is being entrepreneurial. I mentioned we want to take some risks and not over worry about failure either on an individual level at the company or your team. And so if you're not worried about failing and people know that you're moving fast and you're trying to do the right thing for the business, you're definitely going to make some bad subjective decisions, even with all the data supporting it in the world. So it is a balance for us, and at some point you have to use your instincts and experience to make the best decision you can. So.
I have a question for you. So I'm curious, what are the things that you've had to fight for? Like you talk about some of the struggles. What are you fighting for, to keep in Maine or to, to produce for your employees, to keep people here?
That's a tough one. Well, I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I mean, I think it's going to sound terrible. I think it's gone really well, and I think we brought something pretty good here and made my job a lot easier. Neerj and Steve really believe in work-life balance, for example. We work really hard every day, but we actually you don't see people working 70 hours a week or 60 hours a week. And obviously that's a great fit for Maine. We try to have a lot of fun. So it's a very low ego environment. We have cornhole tournaments, ping pong tournaments, all the stuff that's, kind of beyond the typical work stuff. And forgive the language. I mean, again, we use like a no a-hole policy. So, we just have really great people. So I guess I would say we haven't had to fight for a lot because I think our founders and the company in general have really put us in a great position to have things that are attractive to people. And, even when you're having a bad day, because, nothing's going to be perfect, you're working with a really good group of people, you're having some fun, and you're part of something unique in that we really believe we have a tremendous opportunity to keep growing and be the winner in online homes. So.
You've mentioned failure a number of times, and I think it's important because a lot of businesses don't talk about it, but is Wayfair doing anything with regards to there's an expectation of failure? Because if you're not failing this many times during the course of a year, then we're not pushing the envelope far enough.
Just want to thank Matt for his hustle up here. No, so it's a great question, and we do actually, and it's not necessarily formalized across the company, but in my function, I report up to the VP of the B2B program, and we use a process that you may have heard that Google uses, which is called OKR. So they're objectives and key results. And so each quarter you go through and you state out your objectives and what the key results would be if you met those objectives. And if you go and you score for them from 0 to 1, and if you show up at the meeting with all scores of 1, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You really should be scoring yourself like 5, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, because if you created an agenda that you just slam dunked no problem, it means you weren't doing enough. So yeah, we do formalize that a bit at the company.
Any other questions?
I have a quick question about your products. If I understand it correctly, you sell products that are made elsewhere by another company. So, and if one would purchase that product, it would come from the other company. And I assume if one didn't like it, they would return to their other company. How do you deal with quality control?
Yeah, and I think that's been the key to the business around just kind of the supply chain, right? So we have 10,000 suppliers. We do have 2 warehouses that are pretty big, and we actually inventory a bunch of stuff to try to, we run quick ship items so that they can actually order it and it'll get to you 2 days later. Really the quality control comes down to our operations teams that are just, we track, all of those incidences. If there's high damage rate on a supplier, high return rate, et cetera. We have all that data and we're looking at that very, very closely. So, certainly you wouldn't be a supplier for too long if you had a lot of issues with, damage or returns or things like that. And, we have a whole team of people dedicated to picking those suppliers up front. We have a process the suppliers go through to be vetted around all that stuff. And a big thing that we're doing actually is trying to take more control of the delivery process for our big items that would go on a truck. So, UPS and FedEx is pretty standard and pretty low damage rates, but it's tough to ship an armoire from North Carolina to Seattle, right? So we're actually in the process of building out our proprietary logistics network, and we've been launching our own, kind of consolidation centers and delivery agents we own the trucks. The drivers will be wearing Wayfair shirts. So, a big part of our strategy going forward will be to try to brand that delivery experience, control the supply chain a bit more on the large parcel side, from kind of origin to delivery. So kind of an army of people working on that with a lot of data at the end of the day. Yeah.
How about a big round of applause for Paul, please?